When you look at where the 49ers are right now, it feels like one of those moments where a decision might already be made behind closed doors. Even if nobody's officially said it yet, the biggest question hanging over this offseason is who Kyle Shanahan is going to trust to run his defense after losing Robert Saleh. And there's a growing sense that the answer might already be sitting in the building. Gus Bradley's name keeps coming up, and not by accident. Shanahan himself has acknowledged that Bradley feels like the obvious choice to a lot of people. And when you step back and look at the connections, it's easy to understand why this rumor has legs. Bradley isn't just some random veteran coach floating around the league. The defensive DNA the 49ers have been running for years traces back to his time in Seattle. With the Legion of Boom, that foundation matters to Shanahan, especially when continuity has been such a revolving door at defensive coordinator. 5 coordinators in 5 years is not ideal, even when the results have been strong. Bradley already handled red zone responsibilities recently. The players on the roster respect him, and there's a comfort level there that coaches value more than they'll ever admit publicly. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is where I want you to think about it with me for a second. Is familiarity actually what this team needs most right now, or should the 49ers be swinging for the absolute highest possible ceiling? Because if you believe the roster is still in a Super Bowl window, then the coordinator hire can't just be about stability. It has to be about dominance. That's the tension in this conversation, and it's why this decision matters so much more than people outside the fan base might realize. Let me ask you this, and drop your answer in the comments. Do you think the defensive coordinator choice is already made? Yes or no? And while you're down there, tell me whether you're comfortable with a safe, familiar hire, or if you want Shanahan to go all out for the best possible defensive mind available. If you're enjoying this kind of offseason breakdown, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one counts as we cover this team all offseason long. Because coming up next, this is where things start to heat up. Even if Gus Bradley feels like the easy choice, there are other names out there with much louder resumes and much higher upside. And once we start comparing continuity to elite production, the entire conversation around this hire changes in a big way. See, here's where the conversation around Gus Bradley really starts to split the fan base. Because once you move past familiarity and comfort, you have to look at results. And this is where the debate gets uncomfortable. Bradley has been around the league a long time, and while his defenses were elite at one point, that point was a while ago. That Seattle run was special, no doubt about it. But the NFL doesn't hand out credit for what you did a decade ago. It's a what have you done lately league, and lately, the numbers haven't exactly screamed elite. When you look at passer ratings against Bradley's defenses over the last several seasons, the trend is hard to ignore. These units have hovered in the middle to lower tiers of the league. That doesn't mean they were disasters, but it does mean they weren't consistently dominating quarterbacks the way a championship-level defense should. If the 49ers are being honest with themselves, average isn't good enough. Not with Nick Bosa in his prime. Not with Fred Warner still playing at an elite level. Not with a roster built to win right now. This is why another name keeps coming up in serious football circles, and that's Jim Schwartz. If Bradley represents continuity, Schwartz represents upside. He runs the wide nine scheme that the 49ers are already built for, and more importantly, his recent body of work speaks for itself. Cleveland's defense didn't just perform well under him, it overwhelmed teams. Year after year, they were among the best units in football, and he maximized star talent in a way that directly translates to what the 49ers already have in place. Think about that for a second. You already have Nick Bosa. You already have a defensive line constructed to attack. You already have a scheme fit. The difference is the ceiling. If you lose a defensive coordinator after one great season, that's not a problem. That's a sign you hired the right guy. Playing it safe might feel comfortable, but comfort doesn't win championships in January and February. So here's the question I want you to answer honestly. Would you rather have continuity with Gus Bradley, or would you rather take the swing on someone like Jim Schwartz, who could turn this defense into a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks? Drop your choice in the comments, Bradley or Schwartz. And if you expect this defense to be top 10 next season, no matter who's calling plays, go ahead and hit like on the video. Because defense might be the headline right now, but it's not the only area where the 49ers are thinking big. Up next, we're shifting to the offensive side of the ball, where roster flexibility could open the door for some truly aggressive moves, especially at wide receiver. See, once you zoom out from the defensive coordinator debate, the next part of this offseason starts to come into focus, and it might actually be even more impactful. The 49ers finally have flexibility again. After absorbing a massive amount of dead money, the front office has made it clear they're no longer boxed in. That matters because when John Lynch talks about being more aggressive, that's not just offseason talk. That's a signal that this roster could look very different when the season kicks off. One area that keeps coming up, and for good reason, is the wide receiver room. Speed, explosiveness, and the ability to stretch the field were missing far too often. Against top defenses, the offense struggled to threaten vertically, and that allowed opponents to sit on underneath routes and make life harder on Brock Purdy. If you're trying to take the next step offensively, you can't keep running it back with the same limitations and expect different results. This is where the idea of a trade starts to make sense. The 49ers don't just need another body at receiver. They need someone who changes how defenses line up before the ball is even snapped. Someone who forces safeties to back up and creates space for everything else Kyle Shanahan wants to do. That's why the wide receiver conversation isn't going away anytime soon. It's going to follow this team all offseason. Let me ask you something real quick. Do you think the 49ers need a full reset at wide receiver, or just one big addition? Drop your answer in the comments, reset or add one. And if you're locked in for all the offseason rumors, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and this is the stretch where things start getting really interesting. Because now we're getting into names, specific players, real fits, and real risks. One option comes with speed and star potential, but also serious questions. The other might be the safer, smarter move. And once you break them down side by side, the choice isn't as obvious as it first sounds. See, when you start talking about specific names, this is where the wide receiver debate really sharpens, because not all upgrades are created equal. One of the names generating buzz is Jordan Addison, and on pure talent alone, you can see why. He's fast, explosive, a clean route runner, and he would slide into Kyle Shanahan's defense without much friction. From a football standpoint, the fit makes sense. He can separate, he can score, and he can punish defenses that lose track of him even for a second. But this is where the conversation has to go deeper. Then highlights. Trading for Addison wouldn't be a short-term rental. You'd be committing real money in real years, because if you make that move, you're extending him. And that's where the risk comes in. Off-the-field concerns matter, especially for a team that's already dealt with major frustration at the wide receiver position. When Shanahan talks about being blindsided by behavior he's never seen in his coaching career, that context matters. You have to ask whether adding another potential headache is worth it, no matter how talented the player is. That's why Alec Pierce keeps coming up as such an intriguing alternative. He doesn't come with the same noise. What he does bring is production, efficiency, and exactly the kind of vertical threat this offense has been missing. Leading the league in yards per catch isn't an accident. It's proof that he consistently flips the field and punishes defenses that play too aggressively underneath. He's durable, he blocks, and he plays within the structure of the offense, which is something Shanahan values more than almost anything. Now think about the games where the 49ers struggled against elite defenses. The problem wasn't effort. It was the lack of explosive plays downfield. Pierce directly addresses that. He forces defenses to respect the deep ball, and that alone changes the geometry of the field for everyone else. Sometimes the smarter move isn't the flashier name. It's the player who solves the actual problem. So I want to hear from you on this one. If you had to choose today, would you rather trade for Jordan Addison or target Alec Pierce as the safer, cleaner fit? Drop Addison or Pierce in the comments. And if you appreciate breaking these decisions down beyond the surface level, hit like on the video and make sure you're subscribed as we keep pushing toward 1,000 subscribers. Because there's still one more layer to this conversation. What if the 49ers decide not to play it safe at all? What if they go all the way to the top of the market and chase a true game-changing superstar? That's where this offseason could take a dramatic turn, and we're getting into that next. See, now let's talk about the move that would completely change the conversation around this offense, the kind of move that would send a shockwave through the league. If the 49ers are serious about being aggressive, there's one idea that keeps popping up in the background, and it's the nuclear option. If you're going to trade for a wide receiver from Minnesota, why stop at the good one when you could aim for a generational one? Justin Jefferson is in a tier of his own. He's not just a top wide receiver, he's one of the best players in football, period. Still young, still in his prime, and already a nightmare for defensive coordinators. The frustration factor matters here. Quarterback instability, lack of playoff success, and years of coming up short can push even the most patient stars to look around. If a window ever opens, even slightly, the 49ers are one of the few teams that can realistically maximize what Jefferson does best. Now imagine him in Kyle Shanahan's offense. The route combinations, the motion, the play design, all tailored around a receiver who can win at every level of the field. Defenses wouldn't be able to load the box, they couldn't cheat safeties downhill. And suddenly Brock Purdy is thrown to the most complete wide receiver he's ever worked with. That's not just an upgrade, that's a transformation. And this is where you circle back to what John Lynch has been signaling. Flexibility, boldness, a willingness to do things differently. If you can only land one superstar, and you're choosing between another elite edge rusher or a true game-breaking receiver, the offensive impact might be even greater. A player like Jefferson doesn't just score touchdowns. He elevates everyone else on the field. So here's the final question, and I want you to really think about it. If the 49ers go all in on one move this offseason, should it be for a superstar wide receiver? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're excited about the possibility of bold moves, make sure you're subscribed and help us hit that 1,000 subscriber goal. Like the video if you want this front office to swing big. Now before we wrap this up, I want to know one last thing from you. Would you rather see the 49ers play it safe or take the risk that could put them right back on top? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.